doing the last couple. So I got three members. Danny Burch to talk about workers' comp, Aaron Grall talk about mandatory BI, and Alex Miller talk about CON. So we'll start with Alex.
Thank you. Well, I am Alex Miller, and I am happy to be, I believe this is the fourth year that we have passed this bill through the House. Repealing CON for hospitals really comes down to lowering barriers to entry, increasing competition, and expanding access and health care for all Floridians. These needless and antiquated regulations prevent the free market from determining whether there is a need for a new hospital or a tertiary service, like life-saving transplant programs. They fight for years in litigation with each other, with needless paperwork. We have 22 other states that have repealed their hospital CON laws, and with the Senate's help, we can be the 23rd. So thank you.
What you think is one of the things up in the Senate? Why do you think they've been so reluctant to sign on to this?
It is a very good question, and I do not know the answer. My job and our job in the House are just to pass bills through here and to hopefully the Speaker and his colleagues can work it out later. I really do not know.
But have you had any discussions with anybody with the Senate about whether or not they're going to take it up, or you have no idea?
They just do not seem interested at this point, but with 2 weeks left, anything can happen. Thank you.
Next we'll have Aaron Grall on mandatory BI.
Thank you. I'm happy to report that there was overwhelming support for a repeal of our PIP system in Florida, personal injury protection, which has been in place since 1971, and to replace that with mandatory bodily injury coverage in the amounts of $25,000, $50,000, and $10,000 in property damage. I think this is a step in the right direction for Floridians as we focus on personal responsibility on the roads and adequate coverage. And I'm excited to see this major legislation move forward in the House and look forward to the possibilities of it moving through the Senate and actually becoming law this session.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
One of the rationales you have used for why you should do this is because Florida's health insurance rate is where it's at. Florida's health insurance rate is where it's at because of Obamacare, which you all want. So could you just help me understand that logic? Because when you've been asked about the people who don't have any insurance and whether or not they'll be treated for an accident, you've cited that, well, a lot of people have health insurance.
Thank you for your question. That is the current state of things, is that 87% of Floridians have health insurance today. And we don't know what the future of our health insurance laws are. I think that we have to look at the information we have in front of us. What I do know is that the marketplace allows for medical payments coverage and will provide that. And so if and when the health insurance laws change in our country and that number would go down for any reason, people would have the opportunity to purchase additional coverage to take care of any damages that they might sustain that there might not be appropriate bodily injury coverage for.
As a follow-up, you all, in your criticism of Obamacare, have talked about rising insurance premiums in the health insurance marketplace. And you've talked about how it's such a bad thing for the health insurance marketplace. Do you think it's good to possibly load up more people into that system while all this uncertainty is going on?
Well, I think that the reports that I reviewed showed that there was a potential for a 1.5% increase in health insurance premiums. However, I am in favor of a transparent system of health insurance coverage. And right now we are forcing people to buy coverage that already have health insurance. And so I would much rather see a streamlined implementation of health coverage. And I think that this would move us to that as well. Thank you.
And finally, we'll have Danny Burgess, who did the workers' comp package.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to take a moment to thank you and Chairman Diaz for trusting me with this important product that we came out and passed overwhelmingly on the floor. in a bipartisan fashion. Yesterday, we passed overwhelmingly the comprehensive workers' compensation reform package. It's much needed relief for both employers and employees alike. I'm proud of what we put together. We spent countless hours, countless meetings. A lot of you probably were in attendance at some of those meetings in insurance and banking and commerce, in trying to find and strike the right balance between constitutionality and the need for strong reform to reduce the rates that are just crippling our business community here in the state of Florida, and also make sure that this is a package that addresses the need for more benefits for employees. And that is the bill.
Any questions?
I have a general question. It seems to be related to both these bills.
Hmm?
It's per Representative Ball's bill, sir. And help me if I'm wrong with this perception. The perception seems to be from the Florida House is basically go out and get a lawyer, if you sort of look at that. Because what your bill says is that, well, we're going to remove this limitation relative to drivers or not drivers, workers getting their own attorneys. And so if you want to pay somebody beyond the caps, you're free to do so. So in other words, if you want to get adequate representation, pay for it out of your pocket. The PIP bill, the PIP bill basically establishes the principle that we're going to bring back toward, or we're going to have lawsuits relative to people pursuing car accidents. If you want to get relief from somebody, you're going to have to go sue. I'm just, am I missing something here with this idea that you're telling, you all are sending a message to Floridians? Maybe you should just go out and start getting lawyers for everything?
So your question is whether or not the Florida House is suggesting that through these bills that you should go out and get a lawyer in certain circumstances, and that's what our legislation is not encouraging, in my opinion. Our legislation is tampering down very specifically, and I made this very clear in our in all the presentations that we had on this product as it moved through the process, and especially on the floor during second and third reading, that what we're trying to do is reduce attorney involvement within this system. This system was not designed to be ripe with litigation. The system was designed to be self-executing, and that's how it needs to remain to be sustainable. The Castellanos case brought with it some of the largest rate increases we've experienced in 15 years, which is why we're here today with such a pressing need to reform this system. So what we're doing is trying to reduce that, but we're also being sensitive to the fact that we have to strike the balance between constitutionality and strong reform. So that's why we're allowing for a departure fee. There was also a case, and I think what you're referencing is the Miles case. The Miles case is really what changed the system, what kind of uprooted it and allowed for the removal of the bar for a claimant to be able to pay their attorney directly. That's why we are codifying Miles, because that's what that case ultimately said we needed to do.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Appreciate it, Riley. I'll take a few questions. Kristen.
Are you going to take up the Senate version of these?
What I'd say on that is we got 2 weeks left. There's a lot of activity on the recess bill that's still happening, and anything is possible.
What would you say to the parents who are concerned because of the delay? They don't understand this bill so overwhelmingly last year. It passed unanimously in the Senate. They're left wondering what's the delay. What would you please say?
I wouldn't say. I would say that probably a lot of those parents haven't been familiar with the legislative process. That most of what we do is done in the last 2 weeks, and I think it's there's no delay to the extent that.
Can this legislative session end without addressing that bill, without a final vote in the House on that bill?
The legislative session could end without a vote on a ton of bills. Yeah.
You announced in January that the House was doing an audit of the Apalachicola River litigation. And here it is almost 3 months later. You've got a budget that cuts off funding for the litigation. Are results in from is the audit complete or the results in? How do you justify cutting it off?
Well, we've had some of our own members look at it. We've had some of our staff look at it. We've also sought outside counsel and asked them for proposals on what it would look like for them to go through and look at it. And obviously, when you're talking about $80+ million worth of expenditures, that's a lot of records. It's certainly a time-consuming endeavor that's going to have to take place. And so what we're trying to do is figure out what and have conversations led by Chairman Trujillo, who's done a fantastic job, and see where we can get. So hopefully we'll have an update on that in short order.
How do you justify cutting off the spending? Is that just sending a message?
No, I think we feel strongly about our position, and if they think that somehow that's the wrong thing to do or they're in a bad situation, they know the process to try to get that money.
Speaker, what are the chances of the House acceding to the governor's request for $200 million for the dike and $100 million for
Well, they're both a little bit tricky. One is that the dike is $200 million. I mean, if you, again, I hate to always say this, but show us the money. I mean, we definitely have announcements and words, but we need to see the money. I do know that just like the governor, the president does not have authorization to spend. That is wholly within the jurisdiction of the legislature, and I don't think they've done that.
Sounds really close to no.
Well, we don't have it, so yeah, it would be great if we got it.
But what about the
On the Visit Florida, well, I mean, I do, I want to say I love the governor to death, but I've taken some slings and arrows over the last couple months. I've been told I hate beaches, I hate visitors, I hate hotels, I hate tourists, because I'm not adequately funding Visit Florida. And the irony that the governor submitted a budget that hated tourists, hated visitors, hated hotels, hated jobs because it didn't adequately fund Visit Florida. There's an amusement to that, that's for sure.
So we left out anti-family.
Anti-family, yeah, there's all those good
So on a
things.
scale of 1 to 10, how much do you agree with the governor $100 million?
I think the governor ought to go through like we have, and the questions that you got to ask the governor, politely obviously, but is ask him, was Pitbull a good expenditure of taxpayer money? And if it wasn't, let's just take it off the ledger. Okay, there's $1 million off the ledger from last year. Was giving Emerald $10 million or $12 million a good expenditure of taxpayers' money? And if it wasn't, let's take that $12 million off. And then I think you get to a number that at least we can recognize and everyone say was worthy expenditures of taxpayers' money.
As you interact with the governor's office and the closing business district, do you get the sense, the first time I think we had seen him talk about Visit Florida without tethering into enterprise Florida, do you get the sense as you talk to him that maybe that's turning into their focus, and enterprise Florida might be falling to the wayside and they're reminded of it?
No, I think that and I've said it 1,000 times, the governor is obviously he's the governor. He has a tremendous pulpit. He has tremendous passion for both of those issues, and he's doing a heck of a job advocating for them. So I think he'll do that right to the end.
Are the House and Senate, have the House and Senate contributed substantive offers on resolved budget issues and how much progress?
That's a great question. Well, we know we have about 10 weeks left. And so, I think that answers your question. I'm just kidding, Steve. No, I think it's going to go well. I still hold out. I still hold out that it's going to go well. And yeah, there's conversations that go back and forth.
I'd like to ask you if there's no preference to resolve budget issues silo by silo, issue by issue, or in an aggregated sort of way with lots of issues at once.
Yeah, no, I've and I think in the conversations I've had with President Negron, the concept was, when you start going down that path of, incremental, it just takes forever, it's laborious, and I think it's much better to try to get to a big global, here's where we're at kind of numbers.
Have you made a final best offer yet?
I think that we're way too early for final best offers.
Made ethics obviously one of your priorities, and you have the Senate involved in a bit of a little scandal that was going to the past couple of days, taking up a lot of their bandwidth and just slowing some of their legislative action down. What do you think about that?
On what priorities?
I'm sorry?
You said some.
Legislative.
Oh, legislative, yeah.
Slowed down because they took a position. What do you think about Senator Lucas's remarks and
It's obviously a super sensitive thing to discuss, but I'll say it needs discussion, and it bears discussion, and it bears remarks. I'd say first that I consider Frank Artilles a very, very good friend. I know his wife, I know his daughters. He has served our country honorably in the United States Marines, but there's also, without question, remarks that were made that were reprehensible and have no business being uttered in any society at any time. And I think what I'd say on the issue is I feel very confident that a resolution will come about that honors the people of Florida and all those involved.
should he resign?
That's my comments on Frank.
Have you
The
heard from
governor's
any of your
support for
members?
Southern Reservoir for Lake Okeechobee, does that affect the negotiations going on between the Senate and the House on SB 10?
I think what both sides are doing a pretty good job of is trying to not not let personalities or this didn't happen or some you got to keep in mind there's 120 House members, there's 40 senators. I think there's always a thought between the president and the speaker that if all of a sudden a chairman of a committee in the House didn't hear a bill that was purposeful. And so I think what we've done really well, Joe and I, is said let's just keep the focus on each individual issue and let them stand on their own to the best of their ability and be very respectful of the two chambers and what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that's going to happen with Lake Okeechobee.
Governor throwing his support behind a version announced the support was so unexpected.
I've had conversations with the governor in the past, and he's talked quite extensively about the importance of what the Senate has prioritized with Lake Okeechobee, and I think him coming out and saying that officially was probably the right time. I think that him, like the House, I think everyone was waiting to see what that product looks like. I generally, even when I was a freshman, I had a policy that when I was on the floor, I didn't co-sponsor a bill until it got to the floor because they undergo so many iterations, and then all of a sudden, in fact, we've actually had that scenario happen where you'll see younger members sponsor bills and then it comes to the floor and they vote against it because it changed so dramatically. So I think that the governor was probably waiting to see what the package looked like, and he liked the package and he came out at the right time and supported it. I think it's a good move on his part.
You think he's trying to save Enterprise Florida? I mean, there's speculation that
I know, we all know he's trying to save Enterprise Florida. I mean, he's traveling the state telling every... I don't...
There's a deal going on between...
No, I don't believe that. No.
On the gambling compact, you guys may have it done in time for the recession, but you might not. And at the same time, your lead negotiator is in the mix to be a federal prosecutor. How big a setback would it be if he gets a promotion outside of the House while you're still in the midst of trying to figure this thing out?
Well, I mean, I'll speak on when it comes to Pepe Diaz. I've said it to a lot of folks. He is one of my best friends in the process. To lose Pepe Diaz would be a huge loss, not for me, just for me, but for the entire House. And he's a guy that I go to and seek counsel on tons of stuff. Whether he gets the position or doesn't get the position, he's already navigated something that's never been done before in the last decade or more. And that is, for the most part, he's championed a bill all the way through the process into conference. President-designate Galvano has done the same thing. So I get this. There's always going to be skepticism. We always say it's a heavy lift. But to get to this point on a gaming package and to be in conference and to start having those conversations, most people prior to session would have said that couldn't be accomplished. And so I think now that it's in conference, Chairman Diaz is going to do the same great work that he's done to this point, the same great work that Chairman LaRosa has done is going to be in conference, and I wouldn't count that. It's a heavy lift, but I wouldn't count it out until till the fat lady sings. No offense.
Conference that we were told was going to happen today and is now not going to happen today, and I'm wondering if you have any understanding or knowledge as to whether the intransigence of both chambers is again playing a part in why we're not hearing that anything's happened.
No, I think they canceled it because there is an intransigence between the two chambers. What we did is we have a group picnic at Lake Ella, House and Senate, and so we thought that was more important. In the gazebo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the subject of lit, Chairman Trujillo and Chair Broder have both said that there are things you guys need to see in the final terms and conditions before the House is willing to accept a $1.5 billion pool. What are the deal breakers there in terms of what the feds are willing to involve?
No, they're right. I mean, we have to see what the terms and conditions are. If you call Justin Sr., he would tell you, I need to see the terms and conditions before we can. But more importantly than all of that, we have to get the money. So when all that comes to place, as it has in the past, we've very quickly with the House and Senate crafted a program that put it all together and had it in our budget.
What are there terms that you would be unwilling to accept?
My anticipation, I think the Senate's anticipation is it's a much bigger number than any of us thought was coming, and in all likelihood the terms and conditions will be more than capable. We will be more than capable to work with those terms and conditions and craft something that's workable.
Because it's so big, and you're not going to get postpone getting the budget done and come back?
No, it won't be an issue. It won't be an issue at all.
So you guys can
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
done without
Yes.
seeing them? What are the biggest sticking points, I guess, for allocations? Is bonding still an issue for?
Yeah, bonding's that's being discussed. The biggest one is always the amounts. I mean, obviously we had a very low budget, and then also we're taking into consideration is out years. What matters to us tremendously is making sure those out years are taken care of. And so, as Chairman Trujillo said, we went from $1 billion deficit next year, $1.8 billion deficit in the third year of the outlook, which would be in 2 years. And our budget turned it into $1 billion surplus in year 2 and $1.3 billion surplus in year 3. Those things matter, that we have that kind of longevity and stability in our budget. And so that requires shrinking the budget and making sure you put a certain amount of money in reserves. And so those are some big points. Obviously, they spent heavily in higher ed. We spent heavily in K-12. So to make all those, it's just a matter of trying to make those numbers work and the give and take in the process.
Do you have a sense of what a drop in the allocation data you might make?
No, not really. I mean, I think optimally it would be nice to have allocations by Monday. That would give basically almost a full week for committees to meet and bumps to occur.
You asked hospitals to provide some financial data and other information, and several hospitals either declined or told you couldn't release the data because it was a trade secret. Do you accept that response, or have you provided any feedback to those hospitals about them either not giving you the information or not authorizing the release?
Yeah, and we'll have more on that. Chairman Trio is working with our general counsel to figure out what our next steps are.
What would you, working with general counsel, do you think there could be sanctions?
Well, I think our history has been pretty clear that to the extent that we can go to the fullest in obtaining data or information, we've done that every single time.
Can you take us behind the curtain for a little bit on the question? I'm going to ask about the budget and the several activity situation. With time growing short, are we facing issues with, Mr. Speaker, it's hard for us to concentrate on this right now. We're distracted by this whole thing with activities. We got a rules committee, we got a special master. That's getting in the way of getting budget discussions.
I think that definitely sucked some of the oxygen out of the room in the last 24 hours. Yeah, that would be true. But we're still working, and I think both sides are working diligently to, despite, if it wasn't that, there's always something. I mean, whatever it might be, there's something that can easily get you off.
Can you talk to me with specificity about how you would resolve the issue, the held no issue of requiring one method of raising funds?
I think there's a path to resolve it. Exactly.
Does it go through the higher ed portion?
No, that's a K-12.
I don't know.
Oh, does it come out of certain things? Yeah, I mean, no, there's a lot of extra money out there. There's a lot. Take one more question.
Well, first, I guess, kind of related to that is, you had said prior to session, you don't like horse trading because that results in that policy. What we're seeing kind of develop is
I've seen you say there's a difference between respecting another chamber's priorities and saying, okay, I know you guys care about this, I care about this. The process always works best when both of them, to the extent that they agree that those are good policies, move forward. What I'm talking about horse trading is when you get to the point when, in the context that I was saying, is when you say, Chairman Jones killed my train bill, hypothetically, and then the immediate horse trading response is now over in the Senate or over in the House, we're going to kill Chairman Smith's car bill. That kind of, or in the reverse is on the positive side. I'm not giving you the train bill unless you give me the horse bill. Well, if one of them is giving every grandmother an additional, on their deathbed, an additional 20 years of life, I don't know why that's horse traded. That doesn't make sense to anybody. And so to the extent that those things don't take place is a good thing, because it puts too much on, it's too heavy-handed is how I would say it. But having the two chambers respect each other's priorities and making sure that that those are moving, I think those are important to both chambers, and that's something that's how we get through all the sessions for the last 20 years, 50 years.
What happened on the floor today to make you issue your warning? I'm curious.
What was that?
What happened on the floor today to make you issue your warning?
Forwarded?
Cell phone videos?
The video, yeah, cameras and the photos.
Yeah. Sorry. It was Republicans and Democrats. It wasn't aimed at anybody, but I'd say over the last 5 or 6 times on the floor, I've just noticed that, and some of them it's positive. Someone was doing, I think, a video or pictures during the reading of the Dozier Memorial. You know, it wasn't negative, but until you have a member's permission, videoing them or taking their picture on the floor with your cell phone is not appropriate. So it wasn't geared. It wasn't Republican, Democrat. It wasn't even negative. Some of it was positive, but you just that can spiral out of hand quickly, and then you can have issues of civility if those things aren't watched. So that was all that was.
Ruling today playing a role in delaying gambling?
No.